The treadmill belt squealed like a struggling animal at midnight, and I was down in our basement trying to fix the damn thing when I heard my wife Lara whispering upstairs. Not talking, whispering. The kind of hushed, breathy conversation that makes a man's stomach drop. I'm Jack Morrison, 43 years old, and until 6 months ago I thought I had a decent life. I used to be an accountant at Henderson & Associates, crunching numbers for small businesses in our mid-sized main city. These days, I train fighters at Ray's boxing gym downtown, teaching kids how to throw punches instead of teaching grown-ups how to dodge taxes. The pay's terrible, but at least nobody lies to me about their left hook. The house creaked above me as Lara moved around our bedroom, still whispering into what I now realized was definitely not her regular phone. Her voice carried that sing-song quality she used to use with me, back when we were happy. Back when I was stupid enough to believe we were happy. I grabbed my phone and texted her, "Careful, the house is bugged." No reply. The whispering stopped. Our marriage had been circling the drain for months, ever since Lara got promoted to senior marketing director at Pinnacle Creative. She started working late, going to client dinners, and treating me like I was furniture that came with the house. But tonight felt different. Tonight felt like the end of something. I climbed the basement stairs, my knees protesting every step. At 43, I was in better shape than most guys my age, thanks to the gym. But my body still reminded me daily that I wasn't 20 anymore. The house was dark, except for the blue glow seeping under our bedroom door. "Lara?" I called softly. "Just watching Netflix," she called back, but I could hear the rustle of sheets, the quick shuffle of someone hiding something. I stood there in our hallway, surrounded by family photos that now looked like evidence from a crime scene. There was Lara and me at Amelia's college graduation last spring, both of us smiling like we meant it. There was our son Ross at his graduation from UMaine, looking proud and hopeful about his future in graphic design. There was our whole family at Christmas, gathered around a tree that cost more than my monthly gym salary. When had it all become such a lie? I went to the kitchen and opened a beer, standing at the window that looked out over our neighborhood. Mill Creek was one of those places that looked perfect from the outside. Neat lawns, decent cars, families who waved to each other and complained about property taxes. But I was starting to understand that perfect-looking things often had the most rot underneath. My phone buzzed. A text from Ray at the gym. "You coming in early tomorrow?" "Got a new kid who needs work on his footwork." I texted back, "Yeah, I'll be there." At least someone still needed me for something. The next morning, Lara was already gone when I woke up. No note, no coffee made, just the lingering scent of her expensive perfume and the unmade bed that somehow felt colder than the February air outside. I found her regular phone on the kitchen counter, plugged into its charger, which meant she'd taken the other one, the other phone I wasn't supposed to know about. 3 days later, I found it. Lara had gotten sloppy, or maybe she wanted me to find it. The second phone was tucked inside her gym bag, the one she never actually took to any gym. I discovered it while looking for my old tennis racket in our bedroom closet, buried under workout clothes that still had their tags on. The phone was a sleek iPhone, much newer than her regular one. When I pressed the home button, it lit up with dozens of text messages from someone called A in the contacts. No picture, no last name, just A. My hands shook as I scrolled through the messages. A. Can't wait for this weekend at the lake house. I've got champagne and that silk robe you like. Lara. Jack thinks I'm at a marketing conference in Portland. We'll have the whole weekend. A. Your husband has no idea what he's missing. His loss, my gain. Lara. He's so clueless. Still trying to fix that stupid treadmill like he can fix everything. I sat down hard on our bed, the phone feeling like a live grenade in my hands. The messages went back months. Detailed plans for meetings, discussions about hotels, intimate messages that made my stomach turn. And woven through it all, Lara's casual cruelty about me. He's gained weight since he started at that gym, she'd written to A. Ironic, right? Jack keeps talking about us taking a vacation together. I just smile and nod. Poor guy. Sometimes I feel bad, but then I remember how boring our life became. You make me feel alive again. I scrolled further back, looking for when it started. The earliest message I could find was from last September, right around the time Lara got her promotion. A. Dinner was amazing. You're even more beautiful than your photos suggested. Lara, I can't believe I'm doing this, but I can't stop thinking about you. A. Don't think. Just feel. Life's too short to be unhappy. The bastard was smooth, I had to give him that. Classic lines, probably recycled from his last affair. But what hurt most was how easily Lara had fallen for it, how quickly she'd thrown away 18 years of marriage for some stranger who knew exactly what to say. I took pictures of the messages with my own phone, then carefully put Lara's secret device back exactly where I'd found it. My hands were steady now, my mind sharp and focused in a way it hadn't been in months. If Lara wanted to play games, I could play games too. That evening, Lara came home late from work with a story about a difficult client meeting. She kissed my cheek, the first physical contact we'd had in weeks, and asked about my day with the kind of fake interest that made my teeth ache. Same old stuff, I told her, cracking open a beer. Fixed the treadmill, though. Want to try it out? She wrinkled her nose. Maybe tomorrow. I'm exhausted. I'll bet you are, I thought, but I just smiled and nodded like the clueless husband she thought I was. Oh, I forgot to mention, Lara said, pulling leftover Chinese food from the refrigerator. I might have to go to another conference next weekend. Portland again. The Morrison account is really heating up. The Morrison account. She was using my own last name as cover for her affair. The woman had balls, I had to admit. That's fine, I said. I'll probably spend the weekend at the gym anyway. Ray's got some big fights coming up. Lara's smile was bright and relieved. You're so understanding, Jack. I'm lucky to have you. The words hung in the air between us like smoke from a house fire. I called in sick to the gym the next Friday and followed my wife. Lara left the house at 8:30, dressed in her best business suit and carrying an overnight bag. She kissed me goodbye and promised to call from Portland, then drove off in her silver Camry toward what she thought was her perfect secret weekend. I waited 10 minutes, then followed in my pickup truck. Instead of heading toward Interstate 95 in Portland, Lara drove across town to the Riverside district, where new luxury condos overlooked the Penobscot River. She parked in the visitor lot of Harbor View Towers and sat in her car for a few minutes, probably checking her makeup and psyching herself up for another round of betrayal. I parked across the street behind a delivery truck and watched through binoculars I'd borrowed from Ray. Lara got out of her car, grabbed her overnight bag, and walked into the building like she owned the place. 20 minutes later, a black BMW pulled into the lot. The driver was tall, well-dressed, probably mid-30s with the kind of confident swagger that came from money and success. He had dark hair, expensive sunglasses, and the build of someone who paid for a personal trainer instead of learning to fight in a gym. This had to be A. I watched him stride into the building, and my hands tightened on the steering wheel. In my mind, I could see Lara opening the door to let him in, could imagine her face lighting up the way it used to light up for me. The rational part of my brain told me to drive away, to go home and figure out how to handle this like a civilized adult. File for divorce, split our assets, try to salvage some dignity from the wreckage of our marriage. But the other part of my brain, the part that had been learning about violence and revenge at Ray's gym, had different ideas. I got out of my truck and walked over to the BMW. It was pristine, probably detailed weekly, with vanity plates that read, Adrian1, so A was Adrian. At least now I had a name for my wife's midlife crisis. I took out my phone and snapped pictures of the license plate, then walked around the car looking for anything useful. The doors were locked, but the windows were down just a crack for ventilation. In the back seat, I could see a bottle of champagne and what looked like a silk gift bag. The same champagne and silk robe Lara had mentioned in her texts. I looked around the parking lot. No security cameras visible, no other people around. Just me and Adrian's precious BMW. I walked back to my truck and grabbed the small toolkit I kept behind the seat. Ray had taught me that sometimes you had to fight dirty to win, and this felt like one of those times. I loosened the valve stems on Adrian's rear tires, not enough to make them flat immediately, but enough to cause problems later. Then, I used a screwdriver to scratch a small but noticeable line along the driver's side door, just deep enough to reach the metal underneath. Finally, I took out the tube of red lipstick I'd bought that morning and wrote cheater across the windshield in letters large enough to be seen from space. It felt good. Better than good. It felt righteous. I was walking back to my truck when I realized someone might see the vandalism and call the police before Adrian found it. That would ruin everything. So I sat in my truck and waited. 3 hours later, Lara and Adrian emerged from the building, laughing and holding hands like teenagers. Lara looked happier than I'd seen her in years, her face flushed, and her hair slightly messed up in a way that told me exactly how they'd spent their afternoon. They froze when they saw the BMW. Adrian's face went from confusion to rage in about 2 seconds. He started shouting, waving his arms, looking around the parking lot like he expected to find the vandal hiding behind a trash can. Lara put her hand on his arm, trying to calm him down, but I could see the fear in her body language. She was wondering if I knew, if I'd followed her. Adrian got on his phone, probably calling the police or his insurance company. Lara kept looking around nervously, and for a moment her eyes seemed to land on my truck, but I was parked far enough away and sitting low enough that she couldn't see me clearly. After 20 minutes of phone calls and angry pacing, Adrian managed to get his car started despite the slowly deflating tires. They drove off together, probably heading for a car wash and then a very different kind of weekend than they'd planned. I waited until they were gone, then drove home with a smile on my face for the first time in months. The war had begun. Lara's brother Michael had always been a problem, but he became insufferable after Lara started her affair. Michael was 2 years younger than Lara, with the same dark hair and sharp features, but where Lara had worked for her success, Michael had always expected it to be handed to him. He was a real estate agent who drove a leased Mercedes and wore suits that cost more than most people's monthly rent, but somehow never seemed to have any actual money. He was also the kind of man who thought every problem could be solved by throwing around his imagined authority and making demands. The trouble started the Monday after I'd vandalized Adrian's car. I was at the gym working with Tommy Rodriguez, a 17-year-old kid who had real potential if he could learn to keep his guard up, when my phone rang. "Jack, we need to talk." Michael's voice was sharp and accusatory. "Lara told me about your behavior this weekend." I stepped away from the ring, motioning for Tommy to keep working the heavy bag. "What behavior would that be, Michael?" "Don't play dumb." "Following her to Portland, making a scene at her hotel. She's humiliated." So that was the story Lara had decided to tell. Interesting. "I didn't go to Portland," I said calmly. "I was here at the gym all weekend. Ray can vouch for me. Lara saw you, Jack. She saw your truck. Then Lara needs glasses. Or maybe she needs to stop lying." There was a long pause. When Michael spoke again, his voice had dropped to the low, threatening tone he probably used on clients who were late with their payments. "Listen to me very carefully, Jack. Lara is my sister, and she's going through a difficult time right now. The last thing she needs is a paranoid husband stalking her and making her life miserable." "A difficult time?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Is that what we're calling it? She's working hard, trying to build a career, and you're acting like some kind of jealous psychopath. It needs to stop." "Or what, Michael? You'll do something about it?" "I'm just saying that Lara has options. Good lawyers, family support, resources you don't have. If you keep pushing this, you're going to lose everything." The threat was clear enough. Michael thought he could intimidate me into backing down, into going back to being the clueless husband who didn't ask questions. "Tell me something, Michael," I said, watching Tommy work combinations on the bag. The kid had good form, good instincts. "Does Lara's boyfriend know she has a brother who fights her battles for her?" Another long pause. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Sure you don't. But when you talk to Lara tonight, ask her about Adrian. Ask her about the BMW and the champagne and the silk robe. Ask her how long she thinks she can keep lying to everyone." I hung up before he could respond. Ray walked over, wiping sweat from his forehead with a towel. He was in his 50s, built like a fire hydrant, with gray hair and scars on his knuckles that told the story of a long career in and out of the ring. "Trouble at home?" he asked. "Something like that." Ray nodded. He'd been through 2 divorces himself, so he understood the territory. "You want some advice?" "I'm listening." When someone shows you who they really are, believe them the first time. And when they try to use other people to fight their battles, that tells you everything you need to know about their character. What if the other people won't back down? Ray smiled, but it wasn't a pleasant expression. Then you teach them what happens when they mess with the wrong guy. That evening, Lara came home in a mood I hadn't seen before. She was angry, but trying to hide it behind a mask of wounded innocence. "Michael called me," she said, setting her purse down with more force than necessary. "He said you've been following me. Michael says a lot of things. Most of them are bullshit. Don't talk about my brother like that. Your brother threatened me today, Lara, told me I was going to lose everything if I didn't back down. Back down from what, exactly?" Lara's face flushed red. "From harassing me, from acting like a crazy person. I can't even go to work conferences anymore without you tracking my every move." "Work conferences," I repeated. "Right. How was Portland?" "It was fine. Productive. Not that it's any of your business." "Funny thing about Portland," I said, opening a beer and taking a long drink. "I called the Eastland Park Hotel this morning. They don't have any record of Lara Morrison checking in this weekend." The color drained from Lara's face, but she recovered quickly. "I stayed at a different hotel. The conference was moved at the last minute." "Which hotel?" "I don't remember the name. Some boutique place downtown." "You don't remember the name of the hotel you stayed at 2 days ago?" "I'm tired, Jack." "I don't need an interrogation every time I come home." She started to walk toward the stairs, but I wasn't done. "Lara, stop." She turned around, and for a moment I saw something in her eyes that might have been fear, or guilt, or both. "We need to talk," I said. "Really talk. About what's happening to us." "Nothing's happening to us. You're just being paranoid and jealous, and it's pushing me away." "I'm being paranoid?" "Lara, you've been lying to me for months. You think I'm stupid, but I'm not. I know what's going on." "You don't know anything." "I know about Adrian." The words hung in the air between us like a loaded gun. Lara's face went through a series of expressions: surprise, fear, defiance, and finally, cold calculation. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said finally. "The BMW with the vanity plates. The condo at Harborview Towers. The champagne and the silk robe. Should I keep going?" Lara stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her mind working, trying to figure out how much I knew and how much I was guessing. "You followed me," she said finally. "Yes, I did." "You vandalized his car." "Yes, I did." "You're sick, Jack. You need help." And with that, she turned and walked upstairs, leaving me standing in our kitchen with my beer and the wreckage of our marriage. The explosion came 3 days later, and it involved people I'd considered friends for over a decade. Tom and Jennifer Bradley lived 2 streets over from us in a house that was slightly bigger and significantly more expensive than ours. Tom worked in insurance, Jennifer was a nurse practitioner, and we'd been having barbecues and game nights together since our kids were in elementary school. We'd also been planning a joint vacation to Myrtle Beach for the past 6 months, something we'd done together for 3 years running. Tom and I would play golf while the women went shopping, and in the evenings we'd all sit on the beach and drink beer and complain about getting older. It was one of the few things I'd been looking forward to. So when Tom called me on Thursday morning and asked if we could meet for lunch, I thought it was just a casual check-in. Maybe he wanted to talk about travel plans for the upcoming trip, or perhaps he was looking for some advice on his golf swing, something light and easy. I didn't expect anything serious. I should have known better. We met at Murphy's Tavern, a dimly lit Irish pub downtown that was known for its decent burgers and unpretentious vibe. It was the kind of place that kept to itself, not trying to be anything it wasn't. Tom was already there when I arrived, sitting in one of the corner booths, his shoulders slumped, and a half-empty beer in front of him, despite the fact that it was barely noon. He was staring into the mug, lost in thought, his eyes far away. The sight made something cold settle in my stomach. "You look like hell," I said as I slid into the seat across from him, trying to lighten the mood with a joke. But Tom didn't smile. He just looked up at me, his face drawn and tired. "Yeah, I guess I do," he replied, his voice flat. He didn't offer any further explanation. Normally, Tom was the kind of guy who looked like he'd stepped out of a catalog, neat hair, pressed shirts, the kind of casual confidence that came with a stable job and a stable life. But today he looked like he'd slept in his clothes and had been awake for days. "We need to talk, Jack." So talk. My voice was rough, not out of anger, but from a weariness I couldn't quite explain. I had the feeling this wasn't just about the Myrtle Beach trip anymore. It was something heavier, something I wasn't prepared for. Tom took a long drink from his beer, his hand trembling slightly as he set it down. Then he looked me straight in the eye, his gaze steady. "Jennifer and I can't go to Myrtle Beach with you guys." "Why not?" "Did something come up at work?" I asked, trying to keep the conversation light, as if this was just another one of life's minor inconveniences. "No, it's not work." He paused, his eyes darting to the side as if he was searching for the right words. "Look, we've been friends for a long time, so I'm going to be straight with you. We know what's been going on with you and Lara." I felt a chill run down my spine, like the air around me had thickened. "What's been going on with me and Lara?" "The stalking, Jack. The harassment, following her around, vandalizing cars, making threats. It's not okay." The words hit me like a punch to the stomach. My mind went blank for a second, unable to process what I was hearing. "Who told you that? Does it matter?" Tom's tone was cold, matter-of-fact. "The point is, we can't be around that kind of behavior." Jennifer's scared, and honestly, so am I. Scared of what? Of you, Jack. Of what you might do next. I sat there, frozen. I couldn't believe it. Tom Bradley, a man I'd known for 12 years, a guy I'd helped move furniture and whose kids I'd coached in Little League, was now afraid of me. "Tom, you know me," I said, my voice shaking despite myself. "You know I would never hurt Lara or anyone else." "I thought I knew you." Tom shook his head slowly. "But the Jack Morrison I knew wouldn't follow his wife around like some kind of private investigator. He wouldn't vandalize cars or make threatening phone calls." "What threatening phone calls?" I shot back, the anger rising in my chest. My heart was pounding in my ears. "Michael told us about your conversation, how you threatened Lara and her family." Michael. Of course. Lara's brother had been busy spreading his version of events, turning my friends against me before I even knew there was a battle to fight. The realization hit me like a freight train. "Michael is lying," I said, my voice low but steady. "He called me, not the other way around, and he's the one who made threats." Tom shook his head again. "Jack, I want to believe you, but the evidence is pretty clear. Lara's scared to come home at night. She's talking about getting a restraining order." "A restraining order?" I scoffed, my chest tight with frustration. "Tom, Lara's having an affair. She's been lying to me for months, sneaking around with some guy named Adrian. And when I found out, she and her brother decided to make me the villain. Even if that's true, and I'm not saying it is, that doesn't give you the right to stalk her. I'm not stalking her, I shot back. I followed her one time, just to see if she was really going to Portland like she said. She wasn't. She was meeting her boyfriend at his condo. Tom's face was a mixture of concern and disbelief. He finished his beer and signaled the waitress for another one. Look, Jack, I'm not a marriage counselor. I don't know what's really going on between you and Lara, and honestly, I don't want to know. But I do know that Jennifer won't feel safe around you right now, and I have to respect that. So, you're choosing sides, I said, the words bitter on my tongue. The weight of betrayal hit me hard. I'd always considered Tom a brother, but now he was standing on the opposite side of the line, judging me without knowing the full story. Tom didn't answer immediately. He just took a long drink from his beer and stared at me, his face unreadable. I felt like I was watching a friendship crumble in real time. I'm not choosing sides, Jack, he said finally. I'm just trying to protect my family. I can't be around someone who's putting theirs at risk. I stared at him, the silence hanging heavy between us. Everything I thought I knew about my life, my friends, was now in question. Tom wasn't the only one who'd changed. So had I. And now I was forced to reckon with the fallout of a life I'd once trusted to be solid. I'm protecting my family. From me, your friend of 12 years. From a situation that's gotten out of control. We sat in silence for a few minutes, the weight of a dozen years of friendship settling between us like a funeral shroud. What did Lara tell Jennifer exactly? I asked finally. Tom hesitated. She said you've been following her, going through her things, making accusations. She said you damaged someone's car and that you've been calling her at work, making scenes. I've never called Lara at work. Not once. She also said... Tom paused, looking uncomfortable. She said you've been drinking more, staying out late, coming home angry. She's worried about what you might do. The picture was becoming clear. Lara hadn't just been cheating on me. She'd been building a case against me, creating a narrative where I was the unstable, dangerous husband, and she was the innocent victim. And it was working. Tom, I need you to listen to me very carefully, I said. Lara is lying. She's having an affair with a man named Adrian who drives a black BMW with vanity plates. I can prove it. I have pictures of text messages. I know where they meet. I can show you... Stop. Tom held up his hand. I don't want to see any pictures or text messages. This is between you and Lara. But you'll believe her accusations without any proof? I believe what I see, Jack. And what I see is a man who's acting erratically and making his wife afraid to come home. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. You know what's funny, Tom? 6 months ago, if someone had told me my wife was cheating and my friends were going to side with her without even asking for my side of the story, I would have said they were crazy. I would have said I knew you better than that. Maybe you don't know me as well as you thought. Maybe I don't. I stood up and threw a 20 on the table. Tell Jennifer I said goodbye, and Tom? When you find out I was telling the truth about everything, don't bother calling to apologize. Some things can't be fixed. I walked out of Murphy's Tavern knowing that I'd just lost more than a vacation buddy. I'd lost faith in the idea that truth mattered, that friendship meant something, that good people would stand by you when things got tough. Lara had taken my marriage, my reputation, and now my friends. But she'd also given me something valuable in return: clarity. If everyone was going to treat me like the villain anyway, maybe it was time to start acting like one. The plan came to me while I was training at Ray's gym, working the heavy bag and thinking about the look on Tom Bradley's face when he'd told me he was afraid of me. If Lara wanted to play the victim, I'd give her something to really complain about. But I wasn't going to do anything illegal or violent. I wasn't going to prove her right about me being dangerous. Instead, I was going to be smart about it, methodical. I was going to use the same weapons she'd been using against me: information, reputation, and the power of social networks. The first step was gathering evidence. I'd already photographed Lara's text messages with Adrian, but I needed more. I needed to know who Adrian really was, where he worked, how he fit into Lara's life. I needed to understand the full scope of their relationship so I could dismantle it piece by piece. Adrian's license plate gave me his full name, Adrian Kellerman. A quick internet search revealed that he was a commercial real estate developer who specialized in luxury properties. He had his own company, Kellerman Development, and a website full of photos showing him in expensive suits standing in front of expensive buildings. He was also married. Adrian's wife was named Patricia, and she was a pediatrician with her own practice. They had 2 teenage kids and lived in a sprawling colonial in the most expensive part of town. According to his social media profiles, Adrian was a devoted family man who loved skiing, sailing, and spending time with his beautiful wife and children. The hypocrisy was breathtaking. I printed out copies of Lara's text messages and put together a packet of information about Adrian's affair. Then I did something that felt both terrible and necessary. I mailed copies to Patricia Kellerman's medical practice. I didn't include a note or explanation. I just let the evidence speak for itself. The second step was financial. Lara and I had joint checking and savings accounts, joint credit cards, and a joint mortgage. For 18 years, I'd trusted her to manage our finances because she was better with money than I was. But trust was a luxury I could no longer afford. I went to our bank and moved half of our savings into a new account in my name only. I canceled the joint credit cards and opened new ones that Lara couldn't access. I changed the passwords on all our online accounts and set up new email addresses that she didn't know about. When Lara tried to use her credit card that evening and found it declined, she came storming into the living room where I was watching television. "What did you do to our credit cards?" she demanded. "I canceled them." "You can't do that." "Actually, I can." My name was on the accounts too. Lara's face was red with anger. "This is financial abuse, Jack. I could have you arrested. For managing my own money? Good luck with that. Our money. Half of everything in those accounts is mine, and half is still yours. I moved my half into a separate account. You're welcome to do the same with yours. You son of a bastard." Careful, Lara. Tom Bradley might hear you using that kind of language and think you're the dangerous one. She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her mind working, trying to figure out what other surprises I might have in store. "This isn't over," she said finally. "No, it's not." The third step was social. Lara had spent months building a narrative about our marriage, painting herself as the victim and me as the villain. She'd turned my friends against me, enlisted her brother as her enforcer, and created a web of lies that was strangling the truth. But narratives could be changed. Stories could be rewritten. And social media was a powerful tool for anyone who knew how to use it. I created anonymous accounts on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. I didn't use my real name or photos, but I made sure the accounts looked legitimate. Complete profiles, believable backstories, connections to real people in our city. Then I started telling the truth. I posted copies of Lara's text messages with Adrian, carefully blacking out anything too explicit, but leaving enough to make the nature of their relationship clear. I posted photos of Adrian's BMW in the Harborview Towers parking lot, with timestamps showing when Lara was supposedly in Portland for work. I posted screenshots of Adrian's social media accounts, showing his happy family photos alongside Lara's messages about their weekend getaways. I didn't mention Lara or Adrian by name, but I provided enough details that anyone who knew us would be able to figure out the truth. The posts went viral in our small city's social media ecosystem within hours. Lara's phone started ringing at 6 o'clock that evening and didn't stop until she finally turned it off around midnight. I could hear her in our bedroom, frantically calling people back, trying to do damage control, spinning new lies to cover the old ones. But the truth has a way of cutting through lies, especially when it's accompanied by photographic evidence. The fourth step was professional. Lara worked at Pinnacle Creative, a mid-sized marketing agency that prided itself on its reputation and client relationships. The agency's biggest clients were local businesses and organizations that valued discretion and professionalism. Having one of their senior directors exposed in a very public adultery scandal was not good for business. I didn't have to do anything direct. The social media posts had already done the work for me. By the time Lara got to work the next morning, half the city had seen the evidence of her affair. Her boss, a woman named Catherine Mills, who'd been Lara's mentor and champion, called her into a closed-door meeting that lasted 2 hours. Lara came home that afternoon looking like she'd been hit by a truck. "I've been suspended," she said, standing in our kitchen doorway like she was afraid to come any closer. "I'm sorry to hear that." "No, you're not. This is what you wanted. What I wanted was for you to be honest with me. What I wanted was for you to respect our marriage and our family. What I wanted was for you to not turn my friends against me with lies and manipulation. So you destroyed my career instead. I told the truth, Lara. That's all I did. If the truth destroyed your career, maybe you should have thought about that before you started seeing Adrian Kellerman." She flinched like I'd slapped her. "You don't understand what you've done. This isn't just about me. This affects our kids, our family, our future." "Our future?" I laughed. "Lara, we don't have a future. We haven't had a future since you decided that sneaking around with a married real estate developer was more important than the life we built together. I never meant for this to happen. But you kept doing it. For months. You lied to me every day. You turned my friends against me. You had your brother threaten me. And you were planning to keep doing it until you got caught." Lara sat down at our kitchen table and put her head in her hands. For the first time in months, she looked vulnerable instead of calculating. "What do you want, Jack? What do you want me to do?" "I want you to leave." She looked up at me, tears in her eyes. "This is my house too." "Then buy me out. Or I'll buy you out. But I'm done living with someone who lies to me every day and then acts like I'm the problem when I find out about it. Where am I supposed to go? I hear Adrian has a nice place." The confrontation with Tom and Jennifer Bradley happened exactly 1 week after I'd exposed Lara's affair on social media. They showed up at my door on a Saturday morning, both of them looking grim and determined. Tom was wearing his weekend uniform of khakis and a polo shirt, but his usual easy confidence was nowhere to be seen. Jennifer stood slightly behind him, her arms crossed, her face set in hard lines. "We need to talk," Tom said. "About what?" "About what you did to Lara. About those posts online. About the way you've been acting." I stepped aside and gestured them into my living room. Lara had moved out 3 days earlier, taking only her clothes and personal items, and the house felt empty and echoing without her presence. "Can I get you coffee?" "Beer?" I asked. "This isn't a social call, Jack," Jennifer said. Her voice was cold in a way I'd never heard before. "We're here because we're concerned about you." "Concerned how?" Tom and Jennifer exchanged glances, and I could see they'd rehearsed this conversation. "What you did to Lara was cruel and vindictive," Tom said. "Posting those private messages online, destroying her reputation, getting her fired. That's not the Jack Morrison we know. The Jack Morrison you know was being lied to and cheated on for months, while his friends believed every word his wife said without even asking for his side of the story. So you decided to get revenge by humiliating her publicly?" Jennifer's voice was sharp with disapproval. "By destroying her career and her relationship with her family?" I decided to tell the truth. Lara's the one who chose to have an affair. Lara's the one who chose to lie about it. Lara's the one who chose to turn you against me with false accusations. All I did was provide evidence. "Evidence you obtained illegally," Tom said, "going through her phone, following her around, taking pictures without her consent. Do you realize you could be charged with stalking?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Tom, let me ask you something. If Jennifer was having an affair, if she was lying to you every day and making you think you were going crazy, what would you do?" I wouldn't destroy her life on social media. Even if she'd already destroyed yours. Jennifer stepped forward, her face flushed with anger. Lara didn't destroy your life, Jack. She made a mistake. She was unhappy in her marriage, and she handled it badly, but that doesn't give you the right to ruin her. A mistake? I stared at her in disbelief. Jennifer, she was planning weekend getaways with this guy. She was talking about leaving me. She had her brother threaten me when I started asking questions. That's not a mistake. That's a deliberate choice to betray everything we built together. Marriage is complicated, Jennifer said. People grow apart, they make bad decisions, they hurt each other. But mature adults handle these things privately, through counseling or divorce proceedings. They don't wage war on social media. Mature adults also don't lie to their spouses for months and then play the victim when they get caught. Tom shook his head. You're not hearing us, Jack. What Lara did was wrong, but what you did in response was worse. You took a private matter and made it public. You involved her workplace, her family, her friends. You tried to destroy her completely. I exposed the truth about what she was doing. If she didn't want people to know she was having an affair, she shouldn't have had one. That's not how marriage works, Jennifer said. When you love someone, you protect them, even when they hurt you. You don't try to destroy them. Protect them? I felt my temper rising. Jennifer, Lara told you I was stalking her, harassing her, making her afraid to come home. She turned you against me with lies, and you believed every word without even asking for proof. But now that I've provided proof that she's the one who's been lying, you want me to protect her? We're trying to help you, Jack, Tom said. Can't you see that? You're angry, and you have every right to be angry. But you're handling this all wrong. This path you're on, it's going to destroy you too. I'm already destroyed, Tom. My wife cheated on me, my friends abandoned me, and my reputation in this town is shot. The only thing I have left is the truth, and I'm not going to apologize for telling it. Jennifer and Tom exchanged another look, and I could see them making a decision. We can't be friends with someone who would do what you did to Lara, Jennifer said finally. It's not the kind of person we want in our lives. Even though everything I said about her was true, even though... I nodded slowly. So let me make sure I understand this. When Lara lied about me, when she told you I was dangerous and unstable, you believed her immediately and cut me out of your lives. But now that I've proven she was lying, you're cutting me out of your lives again because I embarrassed her by telling the truth. It's not about the truth, Jack, Tom said. It's about how you chose to handle the truth. No, Tom. It's about the fact that you never really knew me at all, and when things got difficult, when your friend needed support, you chose the easy path. You chose to believe the comfortable lie instead of asking the hard questions. I walked to the front door and opened it. I think we're done here. Tom and Jennifer walked past me without another word, but at the threshold, Jennifer turned back. I hope you find peace, Jack. I really do, but this anger you're carrying, it's going to eat you alive if you don't let it go. Maybe, I said, but at least I'll know I told the truth. After they left, I sat in my empty living room and thought about the conversation. Part of me wondered if they were right, if I'd gone too far in my quest for revenge against Lara. But a larger part of me felt vindicated. For months, I'd been the villain in everyone else's story. Now, finally, people knew who the real villain was. 3 weeks after Lara moved out, I got a call from my daughter Amelia. Dad, we need to talk. Amelia was 20, a junior at the University of Vermont studying psychology, and she'd inherited her mother's sharp intelligence along with my stubborn streak. She was also the kind of person who cut straight to the heart of things without worrying about hurt feelings. I'm listening, I said. Mom called me crying yesterday. She said you posted her private messages online and got her fired from her job. That's true. There was a long pause. Dad, what the hell is going on? I'd been dreading this conversation for weeks. Amelia and her brother Ross were adults, But they were still our kids, and I'd hoped to shield them from the worst details of their parents' marriage falling apart. But Lara had apparently decided that ship had sailed. "Your mother was having an affair," I said. "When I found out about it, she and her brother tried to make me look like the bad guy, so I provided evidence that she was lying." "Evidence?" "Dad, you put her text messages on Facebook. Do you know how humiliating that was for her? Do you know how humiliating it was for me to find out my wife was sneaking around with another man while telling everyone I was the problem? So you decided to get revenge by destroying her." "Reputation?" I sighed. The conversation was going exactly as I'd expected. "Amelia, your mother lied to me for months. She turned my friends against me with false accusations. She was planning to leave me for this guy while making me think I was going crazy. When I found proof of what she was doing, I shared it. That's not revenge. That's just truth. It's cruel, Dad. Whatever Mom did, she didn't deserve to be humiliated like that. What did I deserve?" Another pause. "I don't know. But two wrongs don't make a right. Sometimes they do, sweetheart. Sometimes the only way to stop someone from hurting you is to hurt them back. That's not the man who raised me." Her words hit harder than I'd expected. Maybe the man who raised you was naive. Maybe he believed that being a good person meant other people would be good to him. Maybe he learned the hard way that's not how the world works. So you're just going to be bitter and angry for the rest of your life? I'm going to be honest. If that makes me bitter and angry, so be it. Amelia was quiet for a long time. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. "Dad, I love you. But I love Mom too. And what you did to her, I can't pretend that's okay. I'm not asking you to pretend anything. I'm asking you to understand that your mother made choices, and those choices had consequences. For both of you. Yes, for both of us." After we hung up, I realized that Lara hadn't just taken my marriage and my friends. She'd also put me in a position where I might lose my relationship with my kids, but I still couldn't bring myself to regret what I'd done. The truth was worth something, even if it cost me everything else. 2 days later, Ross called. My son was 22, fresh out of college with a degree in graphic design and the kind of idealistic optimism that comes from being young and talented and convinced the world is full of possibilities. He was also more direct than his sister. "Dad, I saw the Facebook posts." "Okay. Is it true? Was Mom really having an affair?" "Yes." "For how long?" "At least 6 months, maybe longer." Ross was quiet for a moment. "Why didn't you just divorce her? Why did you have to make it public?" I explained the whole story, Lara's lies, Michael's threats, Tom and Jennifer's betrayal, the way everyone had been turned against me before I even knew there was a fight. Ross listened without interrupting, and when I was finished, he sighed. "Dad, that sucks, all of it. But posting those messages online, that was pretty harsh." "Your mother was harsh first." "I know, but you're better than that. At least I thought you were." "Maybe I'm not. Maybe I'm exactly as petty and vindictive as everyone else. Maybe the only difference is that I got pushed too far." "So what happens now?" "Now your mother and I get divorced, and we all try to figure out how to move forward. Are you going to be okay?" It was a simple question, but I didn't have a simple answer. I'd won my war against Lara, but victory felt hollow. I'd proven that I was right, but being right hadn't made me happy. "I don't know," I told my son. "But I'll figure it out." "Dad?" "Yeah? For what it's worth, I think Mom was wrong to cheat on you. And I think her friends were wrong to take her side without hearing your story. But I also think you went too far with the social media thing. So you're disappointed in both of us." "Yeah, I guess I am." After Ross and I hung up, I sat in my empty house and took stock of my life. My marriage was over. My friends had abandoned me. My kids were disappointed in me. My reputation in town was complicated at best. But I'd told the truth. and Lara's lies had been exposed for what they were. It would have to be enough. The final confrontation came 6 weeks later, at the most unlikely place imaginable, the Portland International Airport. I was there to pick up my brother Dave, who was flying in from Denver for a long overdue visit. Dave was older than me by 3 years, a successful engineer who'd moved west after college and built a good life for himself in Colorado. He was also one of the few people who'd heard my side of the story and believed me without reservation. I was waiting at the baggage claim when I saw her. Lara was standing near the departure gates, dressed in her best business suit and carrying a small suitcase. She looked thinner than when she'd moved out, and there were lines around her eyes that hadn't been there before. She was also alone. I watched from a distance as she checked her phone repeatedly, looking around the terminal like she was waiting for someone who wasn't coming. After 20 minutes, she made a phone call. Even from across the terminal, I could see the frustration and disappointment in her body language. Another 10 minutes passed. Lara made another call, this one shorter and angrier. Finally, she picked up her suitcase and walked toward the exit, her shoulders slumped in defeat. I should have let her go. I should have minded my own business and focused on meeting my brother. But something about the scene, Lara, waiting alone at the airport, clearly stood up by someone she'd expected to meet, pulled at me despite everything that had happened between us. I followed her outside to the pickup area where she was standing on the curb looking lost and miserable. Lara. She turned around, and when she saw me, her face went through a series of expressions: surprise, fear, anger, and finally resignation. Jack, what are you doing here? Picking up my brother. What are you doing here? She looked away. I was supposed to meet someone. Adrian? She nodded, not meeting my eyes. Let me guess. He didn't show up. His wife found out about us. She's filing for divorce, and his lawyer told him not to have any contact with me. I felt a surge of satisfaction, followed immediately by something that might have been pity. I'm sorry. Lara laughed bitterly. No, you're not. This is exactly what you wanted. What I wanted was for you to be honest with me. What I wanted was for us to work on our marriage instead of you sneaking around behind my back. It's too late for that now. Yes, it is. We stood there in awkward silence. Two people who'd shared 18 years of their lives and now had nothing left to say to each other. I lost my job, Lara said finally. I know. I had to move in with Michael. His wife hates me, and their kids think I'm a home wrecker. Are you? She looked at me sharply. That's not fair. Isn't it? You broke up Adrian's marriage just like you broke up ours. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. But you kept making choices that made it happen. For months. Lara's eyes filled with tears. I know you hate me, Jack. I know you think I'm a terrible person. But I was unhappy. I felt trapped and invisible, and like my life was passing me by. Adrian made me feel alive again. So you threw away everything we built together for a feeling. Yes. And I know that makes me selfish and stupid and cruel, but I can't change it now. I looked at my wife, my soon-to-be ex-wife, and tried to find some trace of the woman I'd fallen in love with 20 years earlier. She was still there, buried under the lies and betrayal and bad decisions, but she felt like a stranger. What are you going to do now? I asked. I don't know. Look for another job, I guess. Try to rebuild my life. Try to figure out how to face our kids after what I've done. They still love you, Lara. You're still their mother. They're ashamed of me. And they should be. A taxi pulled up to the curb, and Lara picked up her suitcase. Lara, wait. She turned back to me, and for a moment I saw the vulnerability she'd been hiding behind her anger and defiance. I'm sorry it ended this way, I said. I'm sorry we couldn't find a way to fix things before they got so broken. Me too. She got into the taxi and drove away, and I never saw her again. Dave's flight was delayed by an hour, which gave me time to sit in the airport bar and think about the conversation with Lara. Part of me felt vindicated. She'd admitted that she was wrong, that she'd made selfish choices that destroyed our family. But a larger part of me just felt empty. I'd won. Lara's affair had blown up in her face, her lover had abandoned her, her career was in ruins, and she was living with her brother and his resentful family. I'd gotten everything I'd wanted when I started my campaign of revenge, so why didn't I feel better about it? When Dave finally arrived, he took one look at my face and knew something had happened. "You look like you've just lost someone," he said as we walked to my truck. Someone did. My marriage, officially. I told him about the encounter with Lara, about seeing her alone at the airport, about the conversation we'd had. Dave listened without judgment, the way he'd been doing since we were kids. "How do you feel?" he asked when I was finished. Honestly? Empty. I spent so much energy being angry and getting revenge that I forgot to think about what I actually wanted. What do you want? I wanted Lara to admit she was wrong. I wanted people to know the truth about what happened. I wanted her to face consequences for what she did. And now? Now I have all of that, and it doesn't feel like I thought it would. Dave nodded. Revenge is funny that way. It never tastes as good as you think it will. So I should have just let her get away with it? I didn't say that. But maybe there's a difference between holding someone accountable and trying to destroy them completely. Maybe. We drove in silence for a while through the streets of a city where everyone knew my story, where I'd become famous for exposing my wife's affair and destroying her reputation. "What are you going to do now?" Dave asked as we pulled into my driveway. "I don't know. Start over, I guess. Figure out who I am when I'm not married to Lara Morrison. That might be the best thing that could happen to you." Maybe. I looked at my house now, officially, since Lara had signed over her half in the divorce settlement, and tried to imagine a future that didn't revolve around anger and betrayal and revenge. It was harder than I'd expected. But for the first time in months, it also felt possible. 1 year later, I was a different man. Not better, necessarily, but different. I'd learned to live alone, to cook for myself, to find satisfaction in small things like a perfectly trained fighter or a quiet evening reading a book. I'd also learned that revenge, while satisfying in the moment, leaves a bitter aftertaste that lingers long after the initial satisfaction fades. Lara and I were officially divorced. She'd moved to Boston, where she'd found a job with a smaller marketing firm and was slowly rebuilding her professional life. We communicated only through lawyers and only about practical matters, like dividing assets and coordinating visits with the kids. Amelia and Ross had both come to terms with what had happened between their parents, though it had taken time and several difficult conversations. They understood that their mother had made terrible choices, but they also understood that my response had been harsh and public in ways that had hurt everyone involved. We were all still learning how to be a family in this new configuration. Tom and Jennifer Bradley had never called to apologize, and I'd never expected them to. Some friendships don't survive the stress test of real crisis, and ours had been one of them. I'd made peace with that, though I still felt a pang of loss when I drove past their house. I'd made new friends at the gym, people who knew my story but judged me on who I was now rather than what I'd done in my worst moments. Ray had been particularly supportive, offering the kind of blunt wisdom that comes from someone who's made his own share of mistakes. The thing about hitting bottom, he'd told me one evening as we closed up the gym, is that it gives you a solid place to build from. He was right. I'd also started dating again, something I'd never thought I'd be ready for. Her name was Lisa Chen, and she was a librarian at the local branch who'd heard all the gossip about my divorce, but chose to get to know me for herself rather than relying on other people's opinions. She was kind, intelligent, and refreshingly direct about what she wanted from life. She was also someone who understood that people were complicated, that good people could do bad things when they were hurt, and that redemption was possible for those willing to work for it. We'd been seeing each other for 3 months, and while I wasn't ready to make any grand pronouncements about the future, I was hopeful in ways I hadn't been since before I'd found Lara's secret phone. The final piece of closure came on a cold February morning, exactly 1 year after I'd followed Lara to Adrian's condo and started the chain of events that destroyed our marriage. I was at the gym, working with a new fighter named Marcus who had potential but needed work on his defense, when my phone rang. It was Michael, Lara's brother. I almost didn't answer. Michael and I hadn't spoken since the day he'd threatened me over the phone, and I had no interest in rehashing old grievances. But something made me pick up. "Jack, it's Michael." "I know. I'm calling to apologize." That was not what I'd expected. For what? For the way I handled things last year. For threatening you. For taking Lara's side without getting the whole story. For making a bad situation worse. I sat down on a bench, suddenly needing to focus completely on the conversation. What brought this on? Michael sighed. Lara told me the truth, about the affair, about the lies she told, about the way she manipulated everyone into taking her side. She said she couldn't live with the guilt anymore. When did this happen? Last week? She drove up from Boston and we had a long conversation. She told me everything, Jack. About Adrian, about the months of lying, about how she turned your friends against you with false stories. She said you were telling the truth all along. I felt a complex mix of emotions, vindication, sadness, and something that might have been relief. Why are you telling me this? Because I owe you an apology. Because I was wrong to threaten you. Because I should have listened to your side of the story before I chose sides. And because Lara asked you to call me? No, actually. Lara doesn't know I'm calling. She said she was too ashamed to contact you directly, that she'd already caused enough damage. This is me, trying to make things right. I thought about that. Michael had always been arrogant and entitled, but he'd also been loyal to his family. Calling me to apologize couldn't have been easy for him. I appreciate the call, Michael. I really do. For what it's worth, I think Lara knows she destroyed something good. She talks about you sometimes, about the life you two had before she screwed it up. She knows she can't fix it, but I think she regrets it more than you might realize. It's too late for regrets. I know. But I wanted you to know that she finally told the truth. About everything. After we hung up, I sat in the gym for a long time, thinking about the conversation and what it meant. Lara had finally admitted to her brother that she'd been lying all along. She'd acknowledged that I'd been telling the truth, that she'd manipulated our friends and family, that she'd destroyed our marriage through her own choices. It was the vindication I'd wanted a year ago, but now it felt less important than I'd expected. I'd already moved on. I'd built a new life, found new relationships, discovered new ways to be happy. Lara's confession didn't change any of that. But it did provide a sense of closure, a final punctuation mark on the story of our marriage. That evening, I took Lisa to dinner at a restaurant downtown, not far from the office building where Lara used to work. As we walked past Pinnacle Creative, I glanced up at the windows where my ex-wife had once planned her secret meetings and crafted her careful lies. I felt nothing. No anger, no bitterness, no regret. Just the mild curiosity of someone looking at a place where important things had once happened to someone else. "You okay?" Lisa asked, following my gaze. "Yeah, just remembering something. Good memory or bad memory?" I thought about it. Both, I guess, but mostly just old. We walked on, hand in hand, toward a future that belonged entirely to us. Later that night, as Lisa slept beside me in the bed I'd once shared with Lara, I thought about the long journey from that first night when I'd heard my wife whispering on her secret phone to this moment of quiet contentment. I'd lost a marriage, but I'd gained something too. The knowledge that I could survive betrayal, that I could fight back when necessary, and that I could build something new from the wreckage of something old. I'd also learned that revenge, while sometimes necessary, was never as satisfying as simply living well. Lara was in Boston, trying to rebuild her life and live with the consequences of her choices. Adrian was presumably dealing with his own divorce and the collapse of his perfect facade. Tom and Jennifer were still in their big house 2 streets over, still believing they'd made the right choice in abandoning their friend when he needed them most. And I was here, in my own house, with a woman who chose to see the best in me instead of the worst, planning a future that didn't depend on anyone else's approval or validation. It wasn't the life I'd planned 20 years ago when I married Lara Morrison, but it was a good life, built on truth instead of lies, on choice instead of obligation, on hope instead of fear. And that was enough.